You're sat on a complete gold mine inside of your business and you have no idea how valuable it is, but today we're going to unlock that value for you, because in this video, I'm going to show you an automation that I built, which takes my Fathom calls and creates tasks and anything else that I actually want. And I'm going to show you the power of this by going through a previous run of this Make automation that I made for myself not too long ago. Now, before you start screaming, talking about, oh, you're in Make, you're so 2024, listen, you have 47 overdue tasks that need to be done. Your clients are screaming at you. Sort yourself out first. So let's get into it. Now, with this, Fathom is giving me this information. All we're doing is we're connecting our own Fathom account, which can be a team account, it can be a personal account, to a software like make.com so that we can just pick up the information the moment that it arrives. This is very easy. It works the same way that any other webhook would work, where you just create the trigger and then you log in, you go through the OAuth, you sign in through Fathom, you give it your permissions, and then you give it exactly what it needs. Whenever it joins and then leaves and then finishes a recording, it will trigger this automation. What this does is it then goes through, and what we do is we always want to classify the call that comes through. And then once we classify the call, we run it through a couple of things. We add the call to our Airtable so that it's not divorced from the rest of our processes. We run a few processes on it, and then we add some uploaded summaries. We then go through and we push the item through to our meetings after running it through OpenRouter. And then the final thing that we do, depending on the task, is we grab the information and we can send it off to wherever we want. Now, I'm going to tackle this part nearer the end, but just know that this here is an agentic workflow built in Cursor, currently inactive. So I will say that truthfully, it's inactive. And whenever this doesn't work, this will run and it will still trigger off exactly what I needed to trigger off, because I'm using these predominantly for task management. So let's dive into this and show you what some of the reasoning was behind when this got made. So we'll start off with classifying the call. All I'm doing here is I am saying you need to classify the call based on the summary, and all of the calls will be one of the following. Now, this is not a complete list. And unfortunately, I've been on a couple of calls recently that have generated tasks and done things that I don't need it to do based on the type of call that it is. And the content of the call is almost completely synonymous with some of the other calls that actually fall through this criteria. But this just means that this needs a little bit more work. And if it needs more work, it just means you go in and you make some edits and changes. It's not that hard. All calls will be one of the following. Client meetings, conversations that occur between team members of Icarus Growth and the client. These can be onboarding calls, catch-up calls, or any conversations about things that are being built for a signed client. Team meetings, conversations that happen solely between team members of Icarus Growth. These are usually called team meeting, and sometimes can be called impromptu meetings, because sometimes I would just go meet.new, join a Google Meet, invite my team, and then we'll talk about something that needs to be spoken about. Coaching calls. So this is any call where the call name contains AI automation agency coaching and Icarus Growth. These are calls with 5 to 20 different people where questions about growing an AI automation agency can be found. So I'm a coach inside of a coaching company called Client Ascension. Probably like 500 or 600 people in there. Tons of people join my calls and we just talk about some of the stuff that's going on in AI automation, whether it be building this for themselves or for their clients and then making more money from it. Sales calls, any call where I'm talking with a prospect about their pain points and issues. And then my output must solely be a JSON object following these examples. Call type this, call type this, call type this, blah, 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 blah. And then we just give it the cool name and the cool notes that come from the Fathom recording. So the summary in Markdown it's basically just given to us, which is actually beneficial because in Fireflies, you don't actually get one nice, easy block. What you get instead is, it's horrible. It's basically every single sentence that was said in the call, and it just vomits it in front of you, and then you have to run that through its own processing in order to make sure that you grab everything that you need from it. But that's it. That's everything that we need. We enable JSON mode because this guarantees that the message that the model generates is going to be valid JSON, but we also need to instruct the model to produce JSON ourselves via the messages, which is exactly what we've done here. Whenever we get that, we then get an item which looks a little bit like this. So you can see here, call type is client call. We then pass this message out and then we run the call type through filters. The only things that we want passing through here right now, as of now, are operations-based calls. So I don't want any of the coaching calls to come through, and I don't particularly want any of the sales calls to come through as of yet, because this is the version which doesn't require that to happen. But the text operator will contain team or client. And then from there, we add the call as a record to our call recordings list. And then we do a few things that we need to do in order to determine who joined the call and if that person is a client. So the first thing that we do is we grab the array of emails. Now, the way the things look is that inside of the very first step, and I'll go into the very first step just to describe exactly how things are going. And even though you don't, this is kind of a side note, even though you don't actually need to know how to do this per se anymore because of the proliferation of Claude Code, Cursor, and even the ability to just use NAN's AI to give you the stuff that you need, it's helpful to understand that this is stuff that can happen. It's helpful to be able to read an output and understand the steps that need to be taken in order for something to be achieved. When you don't do that, you rely too heavily on very, very excessive processing that the AIs will do, which just bloats context windows and just leaves more margin for error. So right now, I'm working with, here's a good example. Right now, my context window looks like this. So this is just a bottle of squash. This is my context window right now, whenever I work, because I know all of the processes that don't need AI. However, if you rely on AI for everything, it goes all the way up to here. So now the AI only has this much breathing room in order to make a good understanding as to what it needs to do. And oftentimes, the more context window you use, the worse the outputs get on an exponential basis. So the less context you use, the better and more consistent things go. And consistency and reliability means more than feature expansion. Because if I have a bunch of features that don't work, I don't have stuff. I just don't have things that work. And a lot of things need to be deterministic anyways. But that's by the by. If I go back into Fathom, you'll see here, going back to what I was saying before that tangent, calendar invites look like this. So we have this person, this person, this person, and we have inside of the rest of this information, we have some action items and some of these other things as well. Now, considering what we need to do for the emails, we need to be able to turn each of the emails of the attendees into something that we can just split. So that's what this is used for. Then we remove non-client emails. Then we get the number of prospect emails, and then we run it through a few different routers. So if there's more than one email that is a prospect, we go up here and then we search the client by email. If it's found, it goes up here, and then we add the client record to the uploaded summary. So we just add the associated client to said person that is uploaded in this early stage over here when we create the call. And if it's not found, then what we can do is we can just search all of the clients, aggregate all of them, and then we get the right email based on all the information on all of our clients. And then we kind of just run the same thing, and then we set the client's company name and the client's record ID just so that we can understand if one exists or one doesn't. If the record ID exists, we can just add it. And if the record ID doesn't exist, then we just search again via the client. This is just expanded logic where the objective is to add a specific client to the summary that we have created. That's all this is. It's just projected out logic based on all of the potential edge cases. And it means that we have a pretty clean Airtable because we're able to do that. And this is also another benefit of being able to explain some of the logic in and of itself, because it now means that you can communicate that. And when you communicate that, it gets done really effectively when you start to talk about agentic workflows. Now, I don't do that if it's a team meeting. All I do is I just add my own business to the uploaded summary because I know exactly who is on the team meeting. And then from there, with this, you can see here there's no filter. When there's no filter, it will always run, which means that no matter what happens down here or down here, what we're going to do is we're going to run this open router. And what this looks like is as follows. We replace the markdown with Slack formatting. And what we need to do is turn the heading text into all caps. We turn bold text from 2 asterisks to 1. and we turn markdown hyperlinks into Slack hyperlinks. So all we're doing is we're just reformatting the text that comes through. We do not add or change any text. And then all we do after that is we push the information over to meetings, and that comes out really, really clean. And it also means that we get to keep the URLs that come with every single one of these messages, because with Fathom, the way that a lot of the messages look is, let's say there was 5 topics and each of those 5 topics have 4 points. It will look like, in all caps, topic 1, and then it will say, Sheni said that he was going to do this. Client said that they were going to do this. This also happened. This also happened. Each of these lines are a hyperlink to a specific timestamp inside of that recording. So you can go straight there and you can get the exact answer that you want. This is incredible user experience. This is incredible UI, and it makes everything easier. But you can only get that if you format it in the way that we did just there, which is the reason why we did this. Now, if for whatever reason I've run out of credits, or something's happened with OpenRouter, something's down, one of the fallbacks didn't work as well. Do I have any fallbacks on this? Yeah, I have. I'm running Opus 4.5 first, then I'm running Gemini 3 Pro preview, then I'm running OpenAI GPT 5.1. Has this broken before? Yes, it has. Maybe like 3 times in the amount of times that I've run it, out of the hundreds of times I've run it. And then we just push unformatted to meetings if that's the case. Now, if it's not a team meeting, we go down here, and basically what we're doing is, because I don't want to run any of these requests on our team meetings, I want to run them on client meetings and other things, because the client meetings are what's going to create bulk tasks. So I have a video called my bulk task creator, where I explain exactly how I'm generating tasks that make my Airtable move, such that I don't have to actually go in, sit down, make a new task, manage this task, etc., etc., etc. I can jump on a client call, and then within 5 minutes of me jumping off that call, my Airtable has all of the things that need to be done in place. And even if they don't come out 100%, the fact that they're in place means that I can actually still do things. And I'm also reminded of, or I remember that there are things that need to be updated. So for any call that's a client call, we grab the company name and ID. We actually grab the transcript. So here's where what we were doing with Fireflies comes into play as well. If I go over here to the transcript, and I'll use an example from a previous run, because in fact, it won't be this one. It might end up being one of these ones with more credits being used. If I go through and I show you what the transcript looks like when it comes out, I believe it's line by line. And when it comes out line by line, it looks really flipping ugly. Look at this. Look at this. This is disgusting. So it has the speaker, it has the text, and it's just every single line of conversation. In this case, there were 626 lines of conversation, all buried within one array. So what we ended up doing was we took this and we basically iterated on it, which means that we took that 600 and something block of text and code, etc., and then we split it up so that we could recreate the transcript. And the way that looks is we have, from the text aggregator, which is something that you would have seen in the bulk task creation as well. I'll go in and I'll just explain it real quickly. The whole point of this is we split this out. When we split it out, we get the following. We get speaker, name, email, text, timestamp multiplied by 600. And then all we do at that point is we combine the timestamp with the text and the speaker to recreate the transcript. And that comes out looking a little bit more like this. Name, team, item. Name, team, item. And what we're basically doing is we're recreating what's called a .srt file. And .srt files are basically just what you get when you copy and paste the transcripts from Fireflies and so on and so forth. It's just timestamped, heavily timestamped conversation. We recreate the transcript, we add the full transcript to Airtable, and then we send it to, in this case, 2 different things. Now, Pegasus is an automation that I created inside of Cursor, which would do the exact same thing as the bulk task creator for now. There are more things that can be added to Pegasus. For example, and this is something that I've seen a lot of people do, Whenever they have a conversation where a specific problem came up, where a solution was provided by the company themselves, that can then be turned into items or topics for different LinkedIn posts. It can be turned into YouTube scripts. It could be turned into other types of content. That's the first thing. It can be turned into an SOP or document for this is how you solve this, where an FAQ could be created or an item can be appended to an existing FAQ, and then that can be reread by like a vector database, and that can now be used as conversation back and forth between someone that you're training up versus yourself, so that you just decrease the time that it takes for them to actually get into a position where they can start to take the work on themselves. And as they're onboarding, they can get better understanding of things. It can be used for task management. It can be used for task creation. It can be used for a bunch of different things. And that's the beauty of what these agentic workflows can do. But at the very least, for version 1, I just needed to be able to create tasks, which is exactly what we have here. Now, the problem that I had with this automation is that I'm using, and there's like a webhook secret that I have, which means that this isn't going to run because the webhook secret either doesn't exist or isn't being picked up. That's kind of the current problem right now. It is what it is. But once this is done, and if we get an error message, because Make is so good at error handling, we're able to send a Slack message which says this. So I sent it to my own channel called Sentry. Error code, this is the error message, this is the error type, this is the details, fix it. And then instead what we do is we send it over to our bulk task creator. Now this here, I had to use GPT in order to get correct. But the whole point of this is there are certain bits of code or certain bits of writing that break your code. If you have items inside of your transcript that are speech bubbles, speech marks, forward slashes, or anything else that can like empty lines or new paragraphs, etc., they will break the code because the code will not remain in a state where it can be called effectively and still be classed as valid JSON. So after a bunch of trial and error, it got to this. It was transcript, replace the actual transcript text, where you want to replace the /n with /n, which is basically called an escape. You want to replace /r with /r. And then for client name, it was fine. And for call link, it was fine. And then that goes over to this automation and it goes down this path instead of this path. And that's it. That's the entire Fathom call creation situation here. This is how we're managing all the things that we're doing for our task management. And this is also how we are sending out summaries of calls and generating tasks the moment we jump off of a call. So now I can sit on 8 client calls in one day and have 15 tasks that need to be made. And then once those tasks have been made, after I sat on those calls, I'll go through and just see them one by one. And if one doesn't look amazing, then I'll just delete it or I'll just change the writing inside of it. But it's now to a point where it's almost completely off my hands. So if you like this video, there's a bunch of other videos which are just like this. If you wanted to see how this can be made for yourself, there's a link in the description. You can take a look at that. If not, there's a bunch of other things as well. And I'm sharing knowledge more and more and more nowadays anyway. So talk to you soon.